Hey everybody, welcome to the Daily Objective. And today we're going to be talking about something quite cool. Trust me on that. We got a room packed with hosts today to talk about a topic that confronts every moral philosopher. Now, we're all students of objectivism, and I think we understand that morality is not primarily about confronting evil, and it's not primarily about, sharing your perspective with other people. That's not what it's primarily for, but these things do come up. So when should you speak up is the question that confronts maybe all people. And I'll tell you, I don't know. Thank you. Be back tomorrow.
That's it?
But before we go, let's talk about this a little bit further. First up, we got a guy who, let me tell you, when it comes to speaking up, this guy seems to have no filter at all. He's been a frequent guest on Fox News, Fox Business, probably many other places. I mean, this guy was on TV. There's like videos emerging of him on like MTV News back when like Kurt Cobain wasn't even
Alive.
famous.
Exactly.
Yeah. And well, alive is a big word. Let's just say he wasn't dead. Okay, that's not
Oh,
nice.
come on now.
That's not nice. That's not nice. Jonathan Hoenig.
Great to be with you both. Thank you.
And we've got another one of our reoccurring co-hosts, a man who, let's just say, he's been on more television and movie productions than Jonathan has been on television program, news report type shows. This is a guy who pretty much out of nowhere just became a Twitter force to be reckoned with. I mean, everything is going fine. So why in the world would he want to now start giving his opinion on Twitter is what we're going to get into. Please welcome Mark Pellegrino.
What's up?
So I guess, Mark, let's start with you since this question is fresh. Like, you're a working actor, your job is not to give your opinion like Jonathan's is. And in a sense, mine is as a sort of social commentary entertainer, crazy person on the internet. You got a job, you got contracts, you got representation. What would make you a few years ago want to get on Twitter and start talking about controversial subjects?
Well, first of all, I was mistaken and thought Twitter was actually a very good medium to start spreading benevolent ideas in the world. Boy, was I wrong. No, but I also sensed as I got into the thick of things that a bully culture was starting to rise. And I didn't think silence was the appropriate response to a bully culture. I think that feeds the culture. Ironically, both things feed the culture. I think the real solution is to educate that nihilism out of the culture, which will take several decades before people don't use that form as a vehicle for attacking others. But for me, it was, look, something was more important than career even. It was putting a stop to what I saw as a nihilistic rush in society. And I was willing to take the barbs in my career to participate on the good side of the fight.
Do you remember what the fight was?
Oh, for me, I started being controversial when I started a weekly segment on my Twitter called Can of Worms, where I would open up a controversial topic for discussion. But nobody was really offended by the things that I was saying. It wasn't until I spoke up for Israel, I think in 2014, that I got on everybody's radar and hit list. And the people that began to attack me down the line saw me as a force to be reckoned with. Come out for Israel, especially when A-list Hollywood is signing petitions to condemn Israel for its actions, and you get on everybody's shit list.
Wow. I mean, that's a very particular topic. I mean, it wasn't, so fighting socialism. It wasn't about even crime on the streets of America. We're talking about Israel versus Palestine or the Arabs or whatever, Hamas. I mean, this is a very, very particular topic. A lot of people watching this don't really think that much about the issue, but for you, it was something you wanted to speak up about, and it actually became kind of a defining moment in your public life.
Well, I think it crystallizes this sort of essential playing field, right? We live in a culture now dominated by an ethics of victimology, and there's nothing that exemplifies that more than the Palestinian-Israeli conflict, right? Where you have rich versus poor, and you have the victim versus the victimizer, apparently in everybody's eyes. The cast is the David and Goliath. So it's, to me, it's the flashpoint. You're fighting that issue, but it's definitely touches on the main crux of the problem today.
Yeah, I mean, I think, the Arab-Israeli conflict, or whatever name it's being given, it's like, I see it as kind of like it's like a representative sort of symbolic battleground between Western civilization and non-Western mystical civilization. And I mean, we can't even get Americans to like side with America versus, I don't know, like, we can't even get people to, we can't even get people. It's even controversial to say that like Al Qaeda are the bad guys in the 9/11 attack, right? Like that's even controversial. So if people won't even take a moral stance on like USA versus Al Qaeda, how are we supposed to convince the average Joe out there that this prosperous, relatively civilized, relatively capitalist and science-minded, rights-respecting country like Israel are the good guys when you see the images of suffering Palestinians who are living, in a terrible way? It's very difficult to persuade people when even here in America, it's hard to convince people of that.
Right, and as long as the victim has moral primacy, irrespective of what they're doing, it's going to be difficult to convince people. So I thought it was time to stand out against that. So.
Yeah. Well, definitely, we can get more into the Arab-Israeli conflict another day. But Jonathan, you're neither Arab nor Israeli. I can't imagine you have many controversial opinions. What's it like for you? Now, you're obviously, part of your job is to be a loudmouth, at least as far as your TV appearances.
Pundit, right? AKA pundit, right?
And you guys, there's like 17 people on the screen. Everyone's screaming over each other. It's kind of in the job description to give your opinion. And you were on a network like Fox, which is known to be more friendly to the free market perspective. But then
really?
came relatively.
Yeah.
But then came the era of Donald Trump. And you famously said, if you're a capitalist, if you're pro-liberty vis-a-vis economics, then maybe Bernie Sanders or Hillary Clinton are the better candidate for you. You said something along those lines. And have you been back on Fox since that day?
Not really. But look, I mean, you asked the question. You asked the question, Rucka. When should you speak out, right? And it has a lot to do, I think, Mark, you'd agree with this, with your own context. And I know for me, at least, when I first started reading Ayn Rand in college, I couldn't help but want to speak out about everything. And I became that young person with a copy of Capitalism, the Unknown Ideal in my hand, who was, there was no Twitter back then, but who was like getting into it with anyone and everyone, and probably alienating a lot of people, frankly, in the process. I was never like that prototypical young objectivist asshole, but I was looking to get into it with my family, who I don't think you can convince, and with people in many cases who were over 30 years old, who had already made up their minds. But what I quickly found was that when you speak up, you're going to be looked at as pretty radical because these ideas are pretty radical. So I'm still speaking up. Rand talked about that. Someone asked her, and I'm paraphrasing here, how can you change the world? And her answer was to speak. And I'm quoting here. She says, speak on any scale open to you, large or small, to your friends, your associates, your professional organizations, or any legitimate public forum. You can never tell when your words will reach the right mind at the right time. So, that's what I've continued to do. I don't speak out going looking for trouble, for example, but I say something on issues ranging from, economics to education. And I try to point people in the right direction for greater resources. I think oftentimes, guys, people feel like they have to convince someone for free markets, for getting rid of tariffs. but just plant the seed. Get them to read a little bit of Ayn Rand. Get them to read a little bit of objectivism or Harry Binswanger or Rowan Brooke, and let those philosophers do the heavy work. So speak out, but you don't have to be the torch carrier that wins every argument on the internet. Your life is too valuable to do that.
Yeah, I mean, definitely I've found that recommending Ayn Rand or recommending more specialized scholars than myself is the best way, because I don't have all the answers. I'm a student myself. So kind of the more I've gotten immersed in the world of commentary and discussion and discourse, I found it's a much more mature take to say at times, I don't actually know how to address this, but I think this would be a good thing to read that might help you better, or someone else to ask. Another thing I found, the older and wiser I get, is that convincing people is not that important to me. Like, I mean, it never quite was, but it's less so today. What is the difference between speaking up when it's proper versus feeling an urge to convince people? And is this something you've struggled with, Mark?
How ironic that you should go to me. Yes. Look, I mean, that distinction is a really hard one to make when you feel you have the truth, and when you've thought about the ideas enough to I hate to say this, I hate to posit certitude, but you're certain that what you're thinking is the truth, and you see so much of its opposite coming at you, you just intuitively start to punch at it. You start to hit at everything in an attempt to change the world by changing one person's mind. But I would say for every 3 people I've turned around, 1,000 people hate me. Right? I mean, 1,000.
But Mark, Mark, you don't see I don't know how many hundreds or thousands who, because of you, pick up a little bit of Ayn Rand, or maybe they just buy it and it sits on their shelf for 2 or 3 years. I mean, I owned Atlas Shrugged for years before I actually read it. So it's almost like planting a seed. You've planted so many seeds among young thinkers that aren't true. And same thing with you, Rucka. Turn people on to ideas that aren't going to bear fruit. And Rucka, as you said, I mean, we're students of objectivism. We're all still learning. I mean, for me, for one thing, I don't punch down. I don't waste my time and my attention with people who are unopen to reason, unopen to listening. If they're just there to intellectually masturbate their own ideas. Now, is that okay, Razi? Can we say intellectually masturbate? I don't know. I'm talking about intellectually, okay? But don't waste your time punching down with idiots. And also, for me at least, speak up on a particular issue. Razi, you asked before about the Palestinian conflict. I certainly have opinions, but it's kind of not my issue. So I'm going to leave that for Ilan Journal, leave that for the experts. I speak up when I see businessmen getting dissed, when I see business and trade getting, it's kind of my shtick. It's kind of what I do. So speak up on a particular issue, but you don't have to kind of fight every fight, certainly on topics in which you don't have any real expertise.
That's interesting. I mean, for me, my kind of hot button issue is seeing an entertainer getting canceled, seeing somebody like a comedian or someone getting in trouble for something. Now, I mean, in my case, it almost looks like I've attempted to get myself canceled with the type of entertainment that I purposely produce. But seeing someone who kind of didn't mean for it to happen getting in so much trouble, or even someone who is sort of on the edgy side, still getting so canceled and completely just destroyed by PR. It just feels like an injustice. Interestingly for me, I sort of kept my philosophical views under my hat for a very long time. And there was about 3 years ago, I felt compelled to speak up when I saw that there was like a large movement of people that were sort of leaving the left. And, maybe you guys have followed like Dave Rubin as like kind of the figurehead of that in one respect, but I was more focused on the sort of underbelly of the internet, like people that are into very dark humor and stuff like that. And some of them maybe saw me as kind of a founding father of the internet, but a lot of them, they had always been kind of like de facto left-leaning, whatever people, but then the feminists started attacking them and telling them your type of comedy is unacceptable. Your video games are sexist. The way you guys talk and joke around is sexist and racist. And these people were like rising up and pushing back. And I felt like maybe there's a way I can reach some of these people and show them that there's a better way. Was there? No, they're all on the right or back on the left now. That's a bit of an exaggeration. A handful of them are maybe today objectivists or students of objectivism, and but the sort of accidental outcome, speaking of planting seeds and watching them grow, is that people who are maybe even like younger than that whole crowd, the Sargons of the world, younger than him, like more like, I don't know, early 20s or teenage fans of mine who I was never particularly trying to influence, philosophically. I'll hear from them now, and they're saying, they've read The Fountainhead, they're reading Atlas.
Yes.
I do these live streams on Instagram now, where nowadays you can have fans call in on video on your Instagram live streams, and I'll be talking to people, some of them in India, some of them in Mexico or Mexican Hispanic speaking parts of America, let's say, people from all walks of life. And they call in, they get my sense of humor, we're riffing, we're kind of speaking our common tongue. And then suddenly they pull up a copy of Atlas Shrugged. I'm like, oh, wow. Like, you
That's
never
so
realize.
awesome.
Yeah, you never know who you're reaching. I mean, like, primarily, my entertainment life is not about spreading objectivism, but it is interesting how that ends up happening. Anyway, enough about me. Let's talk about Twitter and Black Lives Matter. Now, it's like, it's a very difficult topic to give kind of a nuanced take on, to say the organization called Black Lives Matter is not a good organization. But of course, the sentence Black Lives Matter is very true. But when people hear you trying to make
a package deal,
they package it, but they don't want to hear about it. Mark, are you worried about losing everything overnight if you give the wrong opinion, quote unquote, about BLM?
Yeah, that's a real possibility. I don't know about now, but certainly a month ago it was. Look, when BLM first came on the scene, they were posting videos of police brutality, and I was retweeting those because it seemed like they were on the side of justice and really trying to highlight something that, well, they painted as an epidemic. We now know that's not necessarily the case, but it seemed like they were on the right side. And then they vaulted into national prominence on a lie. And I watched them promote violence in Ferguson, and I said, this is wrong. These people clearly are not trying to accomplish what they claim to accomplish. So I actually posted an anti-Black Lives Matter article by an objectivist psychologist, Hurd. I don't remember his first name. Michael Hurd. And that has since come to haunt my mentions as trolls try to identify me as a racist. They post that article and my retweet of it, which says somebody had to say it. And my response is always, did you read the article? Of course, they never do. But my association with being anti the organization Black Lives Matter, because of course Marxism sucks and anarchy sucks and nihilism sucks, and I don't want any part of it. But they conflate me with, of course, being racist because I've come out against the organization, and that could have some really nasty effects down the line.
I think I'm in a pretty good position where I'm not famous enough to for anyone to care that much about me, but I'm kind of famous enough to sort of, reach people and entertain. But I mean, Mark, you're obviously very successful, but there are bigger actors. You deserve to be the biggest. There are bigger ones. Have you ever kind of played that equation? Kind of like, okay, if I was, the lead of an Oscar-winning movie this year, I would be getting canceled much harder than I am, or is that just too hard of an equation to try and factor? Is this the first time you're thinking about it?
Well, I never really thought it was a possibility until cancel culture rose up and Black Lives. I never took Black Lives after I sort of dismissed them in my mind. I never took them seriously as an organization. So to see them rise to the level that they did, and to have the financial and political power that they acquired, that was disturbing. So yeah, I'm sure if I had an even bigger platform, people would be searching a lot harder to topple me because they like bringing down big things. That's how they get their self-esteem, and the bigger, the better.
Yeah, and let me remind the audience. I mean, we're pretty familiar at this point with how when business and government are married, you know, watch out. We need to divorce the two. But really, really be careful when government and nonprofits lock arms. That's, I mean, no one even that's not even, no one is even checking for that almost. No one even realizes that's happening. And these are private citizens of these nonprofits that are being given the key to the city, been giving an important voice among law enforcement and among the government officials. I mean, watch out. We need to really divorce crazy social workers and activists from the legal system. Jonathan, yes, you have something on your to say, and then we want to talk about Fox News and your shenanigans.
Quickly on BLM is, you know, for me on these very controversial topics, as you said, Mark, where it's not even what you say, but it's like if it doesn't look the right way, they're going to come at you with pitchforks and torches and find something to do, you know, and I've had that as well. So, you know, for me, I always try to almost not buy into those premises. So when people say, what do you think about BLM? My response is always like, I find looking at people based on their race disgusting. I look at people based on their activities and themselves as individuals, how they act. There's certain cases of police brutality, but not so I reframe the question. I don't buy into this premises that you should look at people based on something as completely insignificant as the color of their skin.
Only a privileged white man would say that, my friend.
Exactly. Yeah, that's a capitalism and white supremacy masquerading.
All rolled into one. There it is.
As individualism. So yeah, you can't.
And quickly, Rucka, I'll share a story. I mean, we started by talking about when should you speak up, and you know, in the aftermath of all of our friend Bosch Foston winning a cartoon contest. This was a number of years ago. Basically, there was a cartoon contest, which was Draw Mohammed. And there was a lot of controversy at that time. In fact, there was some violence associated with it. And the aftermath of that terrible event, I mean, it was wonderful that Bosch won, obviously, but there was violence. It was terrible. I went on a cable network with a copy of the cartoon, which is still amazing. I mean, this is such a classic, and I love a lot of Bosch's work, but this is really one of the best. And in the middle of the taping, the producer cut the tape, and he said, "Do it over. You're not doing that." And I was kind of asked, and subsequently, look, you know, you're going to get people killed, and you know, you realize people were getting attacked. And I say this not to disparage that host or that cable news network, but only to say the lesson I learned quickly was that it wasn't my house. You know, it wasn't my place to do that. It wasn't my show. You could hold up this poster in your house. You can do that in your context, but this wasn't my place to do it. And although I was happy to be able to speak up, I learned my lesson that you have to consider the context as well of where you do speak up.
Mm-hmm. And since you're holding it up in your house currently, do you want to tell people where your house is located?
No, but I'll hold it up proudly and applaud the Ayn Rand Center UK for providing a forum and encourage our viewers to support the Ayn Rand Center UK for that reason. They're not afraid.
They're not afraid. I mean, yeah, I'm good friends with Bosch as well and respect his work. Something I like to remind people is that it's the government's job to protect us from threats to free speech. And when the government has defaulted on that responsibility, then it becomes a bit of a sticky situation when you should, you know, insist on speaking out. I mean, yes, you should, but also you have a hierarchy of values, so it becomes a bit more complicated. So I could sort of understand why Fox wouldn't want to show the cartoon, but I think they're so big and they have such security. Arguably, they should have done it. I think South Park also got, I mean, they got in a lot of trouble for trying to show the cartoon. Comedy Central wouldn't allow them to do it when some bombs went off around Times Square like 10 years ago.
Yeah, I mean, it's terrible that has to be a function. And you know, Rand's answer about what you do to change the word speak. And I just felt like nothing against any, you know, them or anyone else, but like, speak, you know, just say something, be that one voice,
and also
change lives as both of you guys have.
And also, you can see how this ties into like the Middle East and all of that. Like when free countries do not make themselves clear to organizations and people threatening our freedoms, when Israel doesn't make themselves assertive and clear, when America doesn't make ourselves clear to the enemy, then they sense that weakness, and our freedoms do come under attack from abroad. So. Let's not forget the political component of it, that the government has a particular job, and the more the government spends their time doing things they're not supposed to do, they're definitely not doing what they are supposed to do. Speaking of things that we're supposed to do, we're supposed to keep this 20-minute show under 30 minutes. So I'm going to thank you both for joining us today, and thank all of you at home for joining us today. We want to know what you think. Please make your opinion known. And if the internet is good for one thing, it's for giving everybody an opportunity to give an opinion. So until next time, get out there and run your mouth. Goodbye.
Peace.